Good morning, friends. Oh my goodness, it is a beautiful day here in Central Oregon. I'm hoping to get outside. Um, and there is a lot happening today. So I'm waiting for some of you all to get on so I can tell you all the things that are going on today. Some of it, there's my buddy Catherine, always right on time. Barbara is here, wonderful. You guys are joining in. Uh, so it was Passover yesterday, I believe. I think that's right. It was Passover yesterday. And I hope people enjoyed their Passover celebrations. Today it is Good Friday for those of us who adhere to the Christian tradition, like my family. So that's a big thing. And something else, it is also, well, it's our last day of reading. We're going to finish up reading a single thread today. Hold on a second. My dog is really bothering me. I have to pick her up or she's not going to leave me alone. Come here. Oh, stop. Stop it. There, Cher. She's going to sit behind my chair. Now she won't bug me as much. Something else, it's a very big day in our house. It is my mother's birthday. So please join me. Yay, wave mom. A big happy birthday to mom. I'm really glad she's here. We have lots going on. There were presents. There was birthday oatmeal. But there's a cake. I actually made a chocolate beet cake yesterday. I think it's going to be really good. And we're going to have a spa day at home today. And we're going to get out and do a few things. So it's going to be a good day. And of course, Good Friday is very much on our mind, which brings me up to a digital resource that I heard about that I think would be really great, especially over this weekend. So on YouTube, there's a special channel. I've got a link in the show notes, but you can also go on YouTube and look for, I think it's called The Show Must Go On. And starting Friday evening, and it'll be available only for 48 hours, it is the ability to stream for free for 48 hours the show Jesus Christ Superstar by Andrew Lloyd Webber. So that's something they're doing, sharing a show just for a weekend every Friday night. So go over there and look at that out. My tongue. Check that out. Another thing I wanted to bring you, I toyed with the idea of playing with you all and saying, well, okay, yeah, no, I know we're down to the last 2 chapters, but I'm not going to read anymore, so you have to go buy the book. Ha, ha, ha. That would have been good on April Fool. Of course I'm going to finish reading the book. But if you've enjoyed this, and I know that so many of you wish I could go on, I really can't. I really have to get back to work and finish my next book because writing is something I love to do, but it is my profession. It is how I pay my bills, my mortgage, I feed my family. It's important. And writers are like everybody else. And I know writers aren't the only ones. So many of us are struggling right now. This is a hard time for writers. So if you have enjoyed this and you have the ability to do so, I would love for you to go over to my webpage, mariebostwick.com/books, and look at the books there and think about purchasing one. That would be really, I'd appreciate that so much if you have that ability. And while you're over purchasing books, buy a book from another writer, especially writers who've had books coming out during this difficult time. So many writers have had their tours canceled, and it's just a tough time. So if you've enjoyed this, I appreciate it, and I've left all your thanks. If you have the ability to purchase another one of my books, I would love that. And if you can't, I understand, but something to think about. Okay, enough for the shameless commercial, right? Got to make a living like everybody else. So, shall we continue with the last 2 chapters? I am excited. This has been fun for me too. I haven't read this book in years and years and years. So it really has been a pleasure for me to revisit these characters as well. All right. Chapter 35, Evelyn Dixon. It was still drizzling the next morning, but in spite of the cloudy skies, I woke up feeling better than I had in a long time. I actually whistled as I went into the bathroom, turning on the faucet to get the hot water going, which, on the 2nd floor of an antique building with antique plumbing to match, could take several minutes, and started brushing my teeth. As I rolled up the tube, trying to coax the last bit of toothpaste out, I thought about the previous night. Who could have imagined it? Just a few weeks ago, I was so downhearted and depressed that I couldn't face the idea of even getting out of bed. And now here I was, whistling, cancer-free, and about to embark on the expansion of my business, a business that until a few hours before had been teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Now it seemed possible that Cobbled Court Quilts was poised to become what I'd always dreamed it would be. Not just a successful quilt shop, but an important asset to the community, and a community unto itself, where quilters of all ages and backgrounds would gather together for companionship, self-expression, and even healing. I bared my teeth in a genuine grin as I began brushing. Abigail didn't have to ask me to teach classes at the shelter in lieu of rent. I'd have gladly done it for free, but she knew that. It was just her way of helping me save face, while at the same time bringing some good into the lives of the women at the shelter, women whom I could see she genuinely cared about. And it would do them good. I knew it would, just like it had Abigail, Margot, and Liza. These novice quilters from the shelter, many of them abused, debased women who had been told over and over again that they were worthless, would find confidence in their own artistic voice as they sat side by side, stitching together something surprising and beautiful out of cast-off scraps of fabric that anyone beside a quilter would think were too insignificant to be of any use. Yes, I decided as I spat a white stream into the sink and filled a cup with water to rinse my mouth. That was it. My beginner's class project at the shelter would be a scrap quilt, something that would help them realize that even the most torn and ragged lives could be remade into something to be treasured for generations to come. I wondered how long it would take to order the machines and get them delivered to the shelter. I couldn't wait to get started. Lifting my legs high and humming Zippity-Doo-Dah, a tune I'd forgotten I even remembered, I kicked off my slippers one by one like a chorus girl in a kick line and reached behind the shower curtain to test the water. Almost hot enough. Another minute should do it. Best of all, I thought while I pulled a stack of fresh towels out of the closet and put the old ones in the laundry hamper, I was going to be working with some of the people I loved most in the world. Abigail, Margot, and Garrett. I smiled, thinking how wonderful it would be to have Garrett in New Bern permanently. Of course, he'd want to get a place of his own. Living with your mother for a few weeks while you were helping her through a health crisis was one thing. But a young man needed a place of his own, somewhere where he could leave dirty dishes in the sink, play video games until 2 in the morning, and have friends over. The steam coming over the top of the plastic curtain told me the shower was hot enough. And one of those friends, I thought, as I took off my robe and carried the last towel to the bar near the shower, was certain to be Liza. During her school breaks, I was sure she'd be visiting Garrett often, and that was fine with me. Liza was still very young, and maybe a little rough around the edges, but she was smart, lovely, giving. Garrett could do a lot worse, and besides, you didn't need a mother's intuition to notice the spark between them. The way he looked at her when he thought no one else was looking was like thirst gazing on water. It was the same look that, for a moment last night, I thought I'd seen on Charlie's face when his eyes seemed to pierce the crowd, searching for my face the same way I was searching for his. Among the shouted chorus of congratulations, Charlie's was the voice my ears were straining to hear, his the face my eyes hunted for among the throng of well-wishers. I stood still on the center of the bath mat, clutching a towel close to my body, staring at nothing, my eyes focused on the tiny bathroom window that framed a dull gray sky. Yes, for a moment last night, Charlie's eyes had searched for me just as mine were searching for him. At least, that's what I thought. And when he'd found me, for a second, I thought his face was going to split into a grin and he was going to come to me, parting the crowd like an ancient sea as he pushed his way to be at my side. But then, in a breath, his eyes changed, flitted up over my head, and the spark in them suddenly extinguished, and he turned his back on me. The spark was extinguished. Or had I imagined it? Was it ever there to begin with? A fist pounded on the bathroom door, interrupting my train of thought. Mom, how long are you going to be in there? I want to get to the bank as soon as it opens. Not long, 5 minutes. Save a little hot water for me, too, he called good-naturedly. We've got to look like solid citizens today, good investments. Will do, partner, I said brightly, forcing my voice to match the cheery optimism in my son's, an optimism that had been mine until, startled by the sound of Garrett's voice, I dropped the towel and, turning to answer him, saw the blurred reflection of my naked body in the steam-clouded mirror, the pink, half-healed scars that traced my ravaged torso. I closed my eyes and turned away. Stop it, Evelyn. There's no point in thinking about what might have been. There's no point in feeling sorry for yourself. You're alive. You don't have to get chemo. You've got a new chance at life, a wonderful son, and some of the most amazing friends on the face of the earth. And Charlie is one of them. Don't mess that up. You're lucky. Friendship should be enough for you. It must be. By the time the meeting wrapped up, lunch hour had come and gone. Garrett headed back to the apartment, saying he'd eat some of the party leftovers before relieving Margot in the shop. I said I'd see him later, after I ran a few errands. The rain had finally let up. I hopped across a few puddles as I walked into the grill. Inside, a single pair of diners lingered over coffee and dessert. The waitstaff had all gone home. Charlie stood behind the bar with his back turned and a clipboard in his hand. Table for one? I asked. It's past 3. The kitchen is closed. He turned. Oh, hi, Evelyn. I didn't realize it with you. Kitchen really is closed, though. If you're hungry, I could get you a bowl of soup, but that's the best I can do right now. I shook my head. I was just coming over to see you. I was at the Bean this morning. Did I miss you? No, came in early today, trying to figure out why we're running low on scotch. Either one of my waiters is taking a wee nip or 5 when he thinks nobody is looking, or they're giving free drinks out to their friends when I'm out of the restaurant. Or they're just pouring heavy, he shrugged. One way or another, it's costing me money, and I've got to put a stop to it. It's probably the latter, Charlie. Your waiters aren't dishonest, just generous. It's to be expected, I teased. They're taking their cues from the owner. Charlie didn't so much as crack a smile. I've got to finish this, Evelyn. Then I've got to go to the market and pick up something before the kitchen opens for dinner. I really don't have time for a visit today. Clearly, Abigail had been wrong, and I had been right. Something was bothering Charlie. He was obviously trying to put me off, just like he had at the party. But I was determined to get to the bottom of this. Charlie, you've got nearly 3 hours until dinner. What I've got to say won't take 5 minutes. He put down the clipboard and crossed his arms over his chest. All right, what is it? What is the matter? Why are you mad at me? I don't know what you're talking about. I stared at him, refusing to be brushed aside. Pardon me, I take back what I said before. What I have to say should take 5 minutes, but if you insist on having me pull it out of you like an impacted molar, it's going to take 5 hours and be just as painful. Evelyn, he said, other than my becoming more behind schedule the longer you stand here blathering, there is nothing the matter with me. I'm not angry with you. I'm not anything with you. If I seem upset, it's because I'm low on scotch and irritated with my staff, nothing more. He opened his hands, a magician showing there was nothing up his sleeve, and tried to smooth the hard edge of his voice. I wasn't buying. You are always irritated with your staff, Charlie. This is more than that, I insisted. Now, fess up. What's bothering you? You can tell me we're friends. Charlie's bushy eyebrows shot up. Friends? Is that what we are? Ah, I wondered. What is that supposed to mean, aren't we? If you say so, Evelyn, friends. Fine, that's wonderful. Now, if you don't mind, friend, he scowled and started to come out from behind the bar. I've got work to do. I walked to the end of the counter and blocked his exit. Actually, I do mind. For heaven's sakes, Charlie, what's got into you? You're always a little grumpy. Oddly enough, it's part of your charm, but today you're just plain obnoxious. Now, tell me what's up, or I'm going to take one of those half-empty bottles of scotch and knock some sense into you. The last remaining diners turned and craned their necks to see what was going on. Pipe down, Charlie hissed. I've got customers. I planted my feet and crossed my arms over my chest. I don't care. Either you talk to me, I insisted in a somewhat lower tone, "or I'm going to make a scene that'll make your hair curl. Your customers, too." Whether because they were actually finished with their lunch or, hearing Charlie and me spit at each other like a couple of cats, they decided it was time to leave, the diners got to their feet and headed for the door. Charlie pasted a smile on his face as they waved as they passed the bar. "Thanks for coming in, folks. Hope to see you again soon." "You will," the man responded as he opened the door for his lady. It was delicious. Charlie kept grinning until the door closed behind them and then turned to face me. With the restaurant empty, he didn't bother keeping his voice down. "Evelyn, I've had enough of this. I don't have the time, patience, or inclination to participate in your little charade. You want to play games, fine. Nobody's stopping you. But you're not going to play them with me. I've got more important things to do with my time." "Games? What games? What are you talking about?" He barked out a bitter, derisive laugh and smacked his hand against the bar. "Oh, don't play innocent with me. It's been a long time since I've had any kind of a relationship with a woman, and now I remember why. You're untrustworthy, the whole lot of you. As my mother used to say, beauty won't make the pot boil. I should have thought of that before last night, but there's nothing to be done about it now. Better late than never." Charlie was normally a man of few words, but now I held up my hands in an effort to dam this torrent of accusation. "What is that supposed to mean? Charlie, hold on a minute. Will you just take a breath and try to make me understand what you're saying? Try speaking English this time, will you?" "Oh, you're the coy one, aren't you? Don't try that on me, Evelyn. It took some time, but at least give me credit for having enough sense to see through you at last." "What?" "You used me," he shrugged. "Fine, I can accept that. But now that you've got what you wanted from the first, don't come around with any of this, 'Oh, Charlie dear, let's be friends' nonsense." He batted his eyelashes and raised the pitch of his voice in an imitation of female coquettishness that, if I hadn't been so confused and angry, would have made me laugh. "You fooled me once, Evelyn, and that's my own fault. But I'll be damned if I'll let you do it again." "I used you? Is that what you're saying?" I asked incredulously. I could feel the heat of color rising in my face as I began to understand what he was accusing me of. Charlie gave his head one sharp, definitive nod. "I see. That's interesting. Just how did I do this?" He narrowed his eyes. "As if you didn't know," he scoffed. "You used our relationship to make your ex-husband jealous, lure him up here, and get him to come back to you. And you even got him to bankroll your business in the process. Well, good for you. You wanted that big lout back, and now you've got him, cowboy boots and all. I'm sure he'll bring you as much happiness as he always did," Charlie sneered. "But now that you've gotten what you wanted, I'll thank you to leave me out of it." I couldn't believe my ears, and I was so angry I didn't know what to say. But my ire had to boil over into something, and it did. My arm. I took a step forward and slapped him hard. It caught him by surprise, and me too. "Ouch!" he cried, and stepped back behind the bar again, looking to put something solid between the two of us. "Have you lost your mind?" I cried. "I am not interested in winning back Rob. In fact, last night before we got to the party, he asked me to take him back, and I said no." Charlie's eyebrows shot up, and an expression of doubt crossed his face. "You did?" "Rob is on his way back to Texas right now. He left this morning." "But what about the money? Abigail was in here and said Rob was going to give you $50,000 so you could expand your business. Why would he do that if he wasn't planning on you two getting back together? After all, there's no such thing as a free lunch." He gave me a knowing look, as if this homey wisdom trumped all facts. "Who told you that? Your mother, I suppose?" "No," he deadpanned. "Jose Luis Garza, head waiter at the Hampton House, where I bussed tables for a year after I got off the boat from Ireland. Taught me everything I know. He was a greedy so-and-so." Charlie smiled a little, trying to coax me into doing the same, but I wasn't buying. "So Rob's not investing in cobbleport quilts?" he asked quietly. "No. He offered, which was kind of him, but I turned him down. And for exactly the reasons your friend the waiter gave. There is no such thing as a free lunch. I think Rob truly wanted to help me out, to make amends somehow, but to avoid any confusion, I declined his offer and decided to see about getting another bank loan. Garrett and I went over this morning. With Abigail's backing and my newly reduced rent, it looks like they're willing to do it. Good. Good for you, he nodded. There was an awkward silence as each of us waited for the other to speak. Finally, I took the plunge. Charlie Donnelly, you are the biggest fool on God's green earth. Did anybody ever tell you that? Frequently. I don't know how you could have got, oh, excuse me. I don't know what you could have thought was going on between Rob and me. No such thing as a free lunch, I muttered. Anybody would think you were jealous or something, that you and I were, you know what I've been through, the operations and all. I mean, after all that, it's not very likely that, well, you know what I mean. A quizzical look crossed his face. No, I don't. I sighed, exasperated. Charlie, don't make me spell it out. After the mastectomies, I can't imagine there's much in the way of romance on my horizon. Nobody is going to find me attractive, not that way. What are you talking about? Why wouldn't they? I certainly do. The weight of this statement and the silence that followed pressed me on all sides, filling the room like water in a swimmer's ear, making it hard to know for sure the meaning and truth of the words that were being said in the dry world above. Charlie spoke first. Evelyn, don't, I said, drawing back. Don't patronize me, Charlie. You don't have to. I'm not asking for more. Your friendship means worlds to me. Don't feel that you have to pretend. Pretend? Is that what you think I've been doing all these months? Pretending we're friends, and then pretending to fall in love with you? I bit my lip, not daring to respond. He couldn't mean what he was saying. It wasn't possible. I wish to heaven I had been pretending, he puffed. It wouldn't have been half so painful. Coming to admire you, and then care for you, and then love you, and having to watch you suffer so these last months, and not being able to do a thing to stop it. I tried to make myself busy at the restaurant, hoping that immersing myself in work would help me forget my feelings for you. It was no good. I couldn't stay away. But you were so sick. And the last thing you needed was some lovesick Irishman mooning after you. And I didn't know what to say to you anyway. So every morning, during the hour when I used to meet you at the Bean for coffee, I went to early mass to pray for you. And after that, I went to my kitchen and I cooked for you, and then I brought you what I'd made, hoping you'd know what I was trying to say. The Irish may be a nation of poets, but I'm no Yeats. My kind of poetry is produced in the kitchen. The chicken pot pie that reminds you of your mother, the dish so perfectly seasoned it brings tears to your eyes, the mousse au chocolat so dense and rich and sinful that it reminds you of your first love. He took a step closer and wrapped his fingers around my wrist like a bracelet. Or at least your first lust. He smiled gently. When you're young, it can be hard to tell the difference. But I'm not young anymore, Evelyn, and neither are you. We know what love is, don't we? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He wrapped his other hand low across my back and pulled me close. Then how could you think, Evelyn, that I'd be so stupid, so shallow, as to let my feelings for you be swayed by your cancer? You're beautiful. Breasts, no breasts, reconstructed breasts. It makes no difference to me. I love you. I love your creativity and imagination, the way you can take little scraps of cloth and turn them into something lovely. I love your kindness, your generosity, how, even in the middle of the worst crisis of your life, you were looking to take care of the people who were taking care of you. I love your humor and bravery, the way you faced the worst that life can dish out and still came out smiling. I love everything about you. Your spirit, your mind, your face, and your body. You are beautiful to me, Evelyn, and you always will be. His lips were soft on mine, but sure, as if he'd known for a long time exactly how he wanted to kiss me. My head dropped back, and my lips parted ever so slightly, easily, as if I'd known for a long time that I wanted to be kissed. Lifting his mouth from mine, he traced a fingertip over the ridge of my cheekbone and down to my lips. Sweet girl, he whispered, sweet again.
He lowered his head to mine. Charlie, wait. His eyes, so warm and sparkling an instant before, were suddenly dark and serious. Why, what is it? He paused, searching my face for an answer. Do you love me? There is no question on earth that leaves a person more exposed, more vulnerable than that one. It takes a special kind of courage to utter it, a courage that I had once known, but which had deserted me years before, even before the divorce. Charlie's bravery astounded me, touched me, shamed me. Anyone who is willing to risk so much for the sake of a love deserved to be loved in kind. Tell the truth, Evelyn. Do you love me? I do. I think I do. But you're right, Charlie. We're neither of us young anymore. We're too old to risk getting our hearts broken for anything less than the genuine article. The wary, belligerent expression came back to his face, and he drew back a little, taking that defensive stance of his that always reminded me a little bit of a prize fighter preparing to absorb the next blow. Don't look at me like that, I said. I'm not giving you the brush off or trying to let you down easy. One thing I've learned from the last year is that life is shorter and more precious than I had imagined. Much too short to spend it speaking in code. I have resolved to start saying exactly what I mean. And what I mean is that I think I love you, and that probably I have for a long time. But I was so wrapped up in myself, first the store and then in getting better, that I was blind to everything else. I couldn't focus on anything else but getting through the next day, let alone think about love or the future. For a while now, I wasn't convinced that there was a future to think about. And now? I smiled. Well, now it's a whole new day, a new life. But that doesn't mean I'm not carrying baggage from my old life with me. What I'm trying to say, Charlie, is that I'm not sure I'm quite ready to believe that anyone can love me, and not just because of the cancer. I've been carrying this with me for a long time. But don't you hear what I'm saying to you, Evelyn? I do love you. I know, but hearing it and believing it are two different things. Until I work that out in my mind, I'm not sure I'm ready for love. And then, I said, furrowing my brow, there was the kiss. Insulted, he reared back his head. The kiss? What was wrong with it? I thought it was pretty good. It was. Better than good. Spectacular, actually. Charlie grinned, looking pleased with himself. And that's the problem. You see, while you say that you love me no matter what, right now, the idea of physical intimacy is frightening to me. I'm still getting over the shock of seeing myself naked in the mirror. I'm certainly not ready to let anybody else see me that way. Well, it isn't like I was planning on throwing you to the floor and ravishing you. Good thing, because you might as well know right now that my views on love and marriage are very old-fashioned. Not that I'm against the idea of ravishment in general, I smiled. After all, I have been known to read the occasional Highland romance novel, but there's a proper time and place for everything. He nodded and reached for my hand again, holding it in his gently. All right, I can live with that. I can wait. And when the time comes, if it ever does, I can even work on a Scottish accent. If that will help you, lassie. A good effort, but no thanks. Besides, I said, the Irish is starting to grow on me. He laughed, and I did too, amazed to realize that I was actually flirting with a man. I'd forgotten I knew how. When the sound of our combined merriment faded, Charlie's face became serious again. He took a long, slow breath. Well then, where does that leave us? Tell me what you want me to do, Evelyn, and I'll do it. If it's time you need, then I'll give it to you. Anything, he said, and then lifted my hand to his lips, and kissed my fingertips so softly that it felt like a butterfly had lit upon them. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. He took my open palm and laid it flat against his chest. Beneath his muscles, I felt the pulse of his heartbeat against my fingers, steady and strong, trustworthy. It's taken me 54 years to meet the love of my life. I can be patient a little longer, Evelyn. You're worth the wait. That is chapter 35. Isn't that fun? I'm sorry. I mean, it's terrible. I wrote it and I'm saying I love that chapter, but I do love that chapter. And this chapter, our last chapter together, which has, well, I'll tell you about a little bit at the end. Chapter 36, Evelyn Dixon. Evelyn, Margot shouted over the din of chattering women's voices. We're out of coffee. Excuse me just a moment, I said to the reporter. I'll be right back. Margot stood by the refreshment table, holding an empty coffee can. We're out of coffee, she repeated. I had it on my to-do list, but I was so busy assembling the extra kits that I forgot. I'm sorry. Don't worry about it. Getting those kits put together was more important. Maybe I should run to the market now? Margot said uncertainly as she looked around the crowded shop. I shook my head. No, we're too busy here. I need you to give Garrett and Wendy a hand at the registers. The customers are lined up 6 deep. I'll run up to the apartment. Maybe I've got enough to make one more pot. Ivy, our newest employee, walked by carrying an armload of fabric bolts. We're running low on muslin backing, she said. I thought I'd better bring some down from the stockroom. What's going on? I forgot to buy coffee, Margot mumbled. She was really being too hard on herself. Oh, don't worry. I saw we were running low, so I picked some up on the way to work this morning. I should have told you. There's 2 cans in the cupboard under the sink. Margot breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks, Ivy. You're a lifesaver. Do you need help with those bolts? Nope, got it, she said with a smile, and then hurried off with her burden. She is fabulous, Margot exclaimed when Ivy was out of earshot. Smart, efficient, learns fast, and such a hard worker. She's a find, all right. Still a little unsure of herself, but that will change in time. Margot nodded. She must be a great mother, too. That little Bethany is such a sweetheart. Of course, after today, I'm not sure Ivy's going to get her daughter back, Margot giggled. Abigail is practically glued to her. I smiled and turned to look at the long table set up by the front window where Abigail was teaching the running stitch to a group of novice quilters. Bethany sat by her side, her tongue sticking out the side of her mouth as she concentrated on trying to sew straight, even stitches while Abigail, beaming with pride, praised her efforts. What about the baby brother, Bobby? Margot asked. Where's he today? Franklin's watching him. He's as crazy about Bobby as Abigail is about Bethany. They've become sort of honorary grandparents to the kids. I laughed. Remember when Liza dragged Abigail in here over a year ago? Could you ever have imagined that under that iceberg exterior there was a quilter, philanthropist, and a grandma all waiting to thaw out? Not in a million years, Margot said. Hey, you better get back to your interview. The reporter keeps looking at her watch. Oh, I almost forgot. She's got a deadline. Have you got everything under control here? Well, it's chaos, but it's organized chaos. We're fine. Get back over there and be famous, she teased. Seems like I can't turn on the TV or open a paper without seeing your face. You're a celebrity. Sure I am. Go make coffee. Okay, she giggled. But be sure to let me know if the paparazzi show up. She scurried off with the coffee pot. Sorry, I murmured to the waiting reporter. We had a little caffeine crisis. Now, what was your question? I just asked about how you think this Quilt Pro Pink event compares to last year's. She nodded to the photographer, who turned on a pocket tape recorder and held it close to me, then pulled a lined notebook out of her pocket and started taking notes. Oh, that's right. Well, as you can see, it's certainly much larger. I smiled and spread my arms wide to encompass the throng of women. They've got probably 3 times as many quilters in attendance as last year. Thankfully, we just opened up a new, much larger workroom on the 2nd floor, and we've used that to accommodate the additional crowds. If we'd had this many people show up last year, I don't know where we'd have put them. Why do you think so many more quilters have chosen to participate this year? That's because of all the media attention. Last month, a producer from Rise and Shine, Connecticut called and asked if I'd come on the show to talk about Quilt Pink. It was part of their series on breast cancer awareness. After that, I got calls from all kinds of magazines and newspapers and radio stations. The press got the word out, and quilters started coming out of the woodwork. The reporter looked up from her notebook. And were you surprised by the response? Yes and no. Once they'd heard about it, I wasn't really surprised to see quilters respond in such numbers. Quilters are some of the most generous, caring, community-minded people you will ever meet. But I certainly was surprised by all the media attention. Well, it's a remarkable story, she commented. You decide to host your first Quilt Pink event only to be diagnosed with breast cancer yourself, and now, a year later, you're hosting your second Quilt Pink Day, this time as a cancer survivor. You don't come across stories like that every day of the week. You become a symbol of courage to people all over the state. I couldn't help but grin at this. Ha! If you'd seen me this time last year on this very day, sitting in this shop, overwhelmed, overwrought, and bawling my eyes out, the last thing you would have called me was courageous. I was terrified. But just when I needed them, God sent me 3 angels, Abigail, Liza, and Margot. Oh, and one more, Mary Dell. I can't forget her. They picked me up and dusted me off and stayed with me every step of the way. They're the courageous ones, not me. The reporter nodded as she scribbled down a few notes. What advice would you give to others battling breast cancer? Well, the same I'd give to any woman who's facing a challenge or hardship in her life. Cling to your friends and be a friend to others. The need for friendship is the single thread that we all have running through us. Quilters have always known that. Just look around, I said, scanning the faces of the women as they sewed, talked, laughed, and worked on the individual blocks that, when combined, would become one more piece of ammunition in an enemy they were all determined to defeat. There's nothing they couldn't accomplish, no crisis too big for them to overcome, as long as they faced it together. See what I mean? They're the real story here. If you want to know about courage and the power of community, go interview them. Thanks, Evelyn, the reporter said and closed her notebook. I'll do that. Any suggestions on where I should start? The bells jingled as the front door opened. Charlie walked in loaded with bakery boxes and gave me a wink before heading back to the kitchen. I smiled and winked back. Why don't you talk to Ivy? She was one of the first women who took the beginner's class at the shelter. Now she works here. Or there's Abigail. She's the woman who started the shelter program. Or Carol, I said, pointing to a gray-haired woman who was sitting in the circle of quilters, laughing as she worked a knot out of her thread. Her husband passed away several months ago, and she was so depressed she didn't even want to leave the house. Wendy dragged her down here and made her sign up for a quilting class, and now look at her. Really, I shrugged, go sit down and talk to anybody. It doesn't matter who. Every woman in this room has a story worth hearing. Thanks, I will. She shook my hand. It was nice talking with you. Same to you, I said, walking in the direction of the kitchen. I've got to get back to work now, but let me know if you need anything else. Charlie had piled the boxes on the counter and was filling an empty tray with my favorite butterscotch macadamia nut cookies. Those look great. Goodness, cats are doing things, sorry. Those look great, I exclaimed, reaching for a cookie. Charlie smacked the back of my hand lightly. Hey, what was that for? Don't touch those, he said. They're for the customers. But I'm starving. I didn't get any breakfast or lunch either. Unsympathetic, Charlie kept putting cookies on the place. That's not my problem, he said. I was only hired to feed the guests, not the help. Yeah, but I'm the one who's paying the catering bill. Doesn't matter. Customers first. You can have the leftovers, if there are any. I swear, Evelyn, you've got quilters out there, and have you got quilters out there? A plague of locusts. I've never seen women eat so much so fast. Well, quilting is hard work. They built up an appetite. Me too. Oh, please, I pleaded and came up behind him, draping my arms over his shoulders and laying my head on his back. Just one little cookie, please, for me. He turned around, wrapped his arms around the small of my back, and then, using one foot, kicked the door closed. Well, he said, pulling me close, nestling my body tight to his and tilting He said, pulling me close, nestling my body tight to his and tilting my chin up to meet his lips. Maybe we can work something out. 1 minute later, somebody was pounding on the door. Mom, are you in there? Charlie unlocked his lips from mine and sighed. She is, Garrett. Come in. Garrett pushed open the door. Hi, Charlie. I didn't know you were in here. Hey, these cookies look great. He grabbed one and took a bite before Charlie could say anything. Charlie growled and carried the tray out to the refreshment table. What do you need, sweetie? 2 things. 1, where do you keep the extra tape for the cash register? In my office, second file drawer from the bottom. Good. 2, he said with a grin, Liza's here. She is. Why didn't you say so? I thought she had a project to finish this weekend. Just then, Liza's head popped out from behind the door. Surprise! You didn't really think I could stay away, did you? She tucked under Garrett's arm so it was resting on her shoulder. He planted a kiss on the top of her head. I told my professor how much you needed me, so she gave me a 3-day extension on my project. Now, what can I do to help? It was nearly 4 o'clock, only 1 hour until closing. The last few quilters were handing in their blocks and heading home. Thank heaven. I was never so tired in all my life. Tired, but very, very happy. How'd we do? I asked Margot. She held up a hand, demanding silence as she flipped through the stack of finished blocks. 171, she announced. You're kidding. That's more than twice as many as last year, I laughed. No wonder my feet hurt. Your feet? What about my hands? Garrett moaned. My index fingers have gone numb from ringing up sales. I don't know how to tell you this, Mom, but we might actually make a profit this month. And that's not even counting the customers who brought kits to make at home, Liza said. You should be able to make 6 or 7 quilts for this year's auction. All of which Abigail will end up buying at a very inflated price, I said. Abigail entered the room, carrying a tray filled with sandwiches and paper cups. I heard that. Abby, you don't have to buy all the quilts, you know. Oh, sorry, wrong voice. Abby, you don't have to buy all the quilts, you know, Margaret said. Someone else might want some. Well, then they can just outbid me, can't they? It's all for a good cause. Besides, I like quilts. They're art objects. I've decided to collect them and donate them to the new folk art exhibit at the museum. I didn't know the museum had a folk art exhibit, Ivy said. Abigail put a tray of sandwiches on the counter. They don't, but they will once I donate my quilt collection and the money for the new folk art wing. Abigail tilted her chin and beamed an imperious smile. Liza, are you sure you wouldn't like to move back home and work at the museum? They'll be looking for a new curator any day now. Everybody broke out laughing and grabbed sandwiches from the plate. Charlie came in with an uncorked bottle of champagne. Ladies and gentlemen, fill your glasses if you please. We each took a cup and Charlie filled them with bubbly. He put down the bottle and raised his cup. I propose a toast. To Evelyn. I've got a better one, I said, looking around at the circle of faces. To friends, the old and the new. To friends, they chanted. The front door opened, the bell jingling to signal the arrival of another customer. I turned around and saw 2 women. One was wearing a bright blue headscarf and a smile. It was Vicky. I'd met her while I was in the hospital. I didn't know the other woman. I went to greet them, giving Vicky a big hug. How are you? How's the chemo going? I asked. Fantastic. I finished up 3 weeks ago, and the doctor said everything looks good. Look, she said, pulling back the edge of her scarf. My hair is starting to come back in. Looking good. Hi, I'm Evelyn, I said, extending my hand to the other woman. I'm Debbie, she said softly. Her skin was pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't been sleeping well. Debbie and I met at the cancer support group, Vicky said. She's just got her diagnosis, DCIS, just like you. I smiled at Debbie. She tried to smile back. I was telling Debbie about your quilt pink event, and I thought it would be nice if Debbie and I could come and make a quilt block and talk to you. She looked around the almost empty shop. Are we too late? From behind the counter, Abigail piped up. Not at all. We've got plenty of extra kits. Liza, darling, would you clear off that table? The sandwiches are gone, but I think there are some cookies left in the back. I'll go get them, Margot said, bustling toward the kitchen. I'll bring coffee, too. Exhausted a moment before, the whole team now switched into high gear, finding chairs, sewing notions, and fabric for the newcomers. I sat down next to Debbie. I I've never done this before, she said anxiously as she picked up a needle. This is all new to me. That's all right, I said. You don't have to be afraid. You're among friends. I turned the closed sign face out and went to the door and locked it behind me. Charlie was hosting dinner at the grill. Everybody had gone ahead, but I lagged behind, promising to join them soon. The September air was chilly, crisp, and clear, just as it had been on that afternoon 2 years before, when I had wandered down an uneven, cobbled alley and discovered a different world. A crumbling building, a broken paned window, a door with peeling paint, a discarded dream. It had been as easy and as unexpected as that. A corner turned, a breath taken, the pendulum swings, everything changes, as it would again and again and again. I always tell my students that quilts are made up of straight lines, but it isn't true. Quilts are made up of broken lines, just like life. Over and over again, we try to walk a straight path, but we run into dead ends, sharp corners, and uneven ground that cuts us off and forces us to change direction. Sometimes it's painful, and other times it's joyful. But it isn't until you take a moment to stand still, step off the line, and back away that you finally see the truth. Those unexpected turns and startling about faces, the chaotic path, it wasn't chaotic at all. When you step back to see where you've been, you discover the shape, the reason, the intricately beautiful pattern and vivid colors of a life stitched together from what, at one point, seemed like nothing more than mismatched scraps and broken lines. Stepping back, you see that there had been a design all along, and a designer. At that moment, standing in a shaft of late-day sunlight that bounced beams of light off the sparkling window panes and made the paint on the door glow a brighter shade of red, I was happy. I turned around and looked up into the sky. Thanks, I said, for all of it. I wouldn't always be happy. I knew that. Things would change whether I wanted them to or not. My line would be broken again and again. But now my line intersected with others. I had companions for the journey, and whatever we faced in the future, we would face together, each part of a bigger design, bound by a single thread. I slipped the key into my pocket, then walked across the cobbled courtyard, onto the sidewalk, where stubborn tufts of grass pushed their way up through the cracks and up the street to join the people I love, my friends. The end, my dear friends. Thank you for joining me on this journey. It's taken, almost a month for us to get through this. You know, that last part I wrote about the broken lines, I think is the most shared and most quoted thing I've ever written. And I believe every single word of it. So, you know, right now, a lot of us are facing a time with a lot of broken lines. We had plans, didn't we? We knew how everything was going to be. But, you know, that is an illusion. We are feeling maybe out of control right now. Well, we never really had control. What we do have control over is how we respond to all of these situations. So remember, you know, this is not forever. Your line might be broken, but it's going to maybe force you into a new direction, and that's not always bad. So I want to thank you again for, Claudia says, can we find someone else to read to us? Well, no. I really do have to get back to work, guide. But that's a nice question. I'm glad you wanted to. So, you know, and I want to leave you today, because it is Good Friday, with something that I was reading this morning, so that you might enjoy. I hope you will. Something to think about this Good Friday. It's from Luke chapter 23, verses 45 through 47. Then the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was torn in two, and Jesus, and after, excuse me, let me start again. Then the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was torn in two. And when Jesus had cried out with a loud voice, he said, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Having said this, he breathed his last. So when the centurion saw what had happened, he glorified God, saying, Certainly, this was a righteous man. My dear and darling friends, thank you again for joining me. I am going to miss you, but I want you to know that I'm missing you in a good cause. I do have a new book coming out in 2021. It's called The Restoration of Celia Fairchild, and I am working hard to make it a book that you are going to love. So thank you again for joining me on this journey. Bless you, my friends. Have a wonderful Good Friday. Have a wonderful Easter. Stay safe. Stay well.